This video is going to talk about slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is a way of writing an equation of a line so that it's easy to read. And what it is it consists of two major things. It consists of the slope, which is m, and a y-intercept, which is represented as b. Don't ask why, it's just what people chose to represent it as. Please make sure that your b's don't look like sixes so that they're not confused. You can find slope-intercept form, you can find that directly just from given 2 points. So we're going to choose the point 3, 7, and -2, 1. And what we're going to do is, just from these 2 points, we're going to write an equation in slope-intercept form. The first thing that we can solve for is we can figure out the slope, or m, just from being given these 2 points. Slope is defined as the difference of y over the difference of x. So what we're going to do, and there's a whole video on this that's posted as well, so just make sure you refer back to that if need be. But I'm going to take the y's first because y's go on top, so I'm going to say 1 minus 7, and then I'm going to take my x's and taking from the same, so because I had 1 from this point, I have to have the -2 needs to go in the same position. They both need to start off, and this point will need to follow. So then I'm going to say -2 minus 3. 1 minus 7, add the opposite. 1 plus -7 is -6. -2, oh, another add the opposite. Look at that. -2 plus -3 is -5. So what I have here is I have -6 over -5, which turns out to be just 6 over 5, because two negatives, as we know, combine to make a positive. My kids will also do this to show that that doesn't really show. There we go. Two negatives make a positive. So now that I have the slope, I'm going to put that into my equation. So now I have this equation here. I don't know what b is. Y and x are eventually just going to say y and x. They're not really going to have a number. But because I need to figure out what b is, what that y-intercept is, I need to plug in something into this equation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this first point, and you can pick any point you want. It won't make a difference. But I'm going to pick 3, 7 as my point, and I'm going to plug this point into this equation. So because points are always listed in x, y format, my 3 is going to be x, so instead of x I'm going to write 3, and instead of y I'm going to write 7. Now I get to simplify my equation a little bit. 6 over 5 times 3, if I show my work over here, this 3 will become 3 over 1 because it's a whole number, so 6 times 3 will be 18 over 5, and 18 over 5 is going to simplify to 3 3/5. So I'm going to write 3 3/5 here, and that totally looks like a 3. Now I have 7 equals 3 3/5 plus b. So what I want to do is I want to subtract 3 3/5 away from both sides, because now we're just simplifying an equation. Even though it has a fraction in it, it's really not as scary as it looks. You can always think about money when you do this. If you have 3/5 of a dollar, you make that over 100. 5 times what equals 100? Well, that's 5 times 20. 3 times 20 is 60. So think about it as 60 cents. You have $7 minus $3.60 when you subtract that. This won't actually matter. It's just to show more of a money-wise. 10 minus 6 is 4. 6 minus 3 is 3. So you end up with 3.4 equals b, and 3.4 can also be represented as 3 2/5. So what this means is that our equation is going to say y equals, our slope is 6 over 5, x plus 3.4, or 3 2/5. That looks a little bit scary, but let's go ahead and let's break that down and let's see exactly what that means. So I'm going to erase all of this work. And we're just going to keep the equation. I'm going to rewrite it so it's a little bit bigger. It was y equals 6 over 5 plus 3 2/5. Now, what this equation means, this equation is actually really, really easy to read. We're going to put a big coordinate plane on here. I'm going to move it down just a little bit because I'm not going to need the other part. And what's going to happen is we are going to graph an entire line just based on that equation. Apologies that the graph isn't 100% even. So what's going to happen is we have our y-intercept. This says where on this y line, this point, we just get to put a point there on the y-axis. So 3 2/5, 1, 2, 3, 2/5 is going to be right about there. We have our starting point. That's automatically, because what this point is this means that x is 0 and y is 2/5. So you get a free point in this equation. You just get to put it down. You don't really have to think that much about it. This right here, this is our slope. This is going to tell us how much we are going to be running and jumping and trying to graph out our point. So what's going to happen is we're going to take this as rise over run. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rise 6 and run 5, and we're going to have another point. So if I were to jump up 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I were to run 5 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, my next point is going to be right here. And I have a line. Now, is this the best line to show you? No, because it's really hard to show on a whiteboard, but when you have graph paper, which you will be very careful to use, you can use a ruler and really get it to be very nice, and when you put the ruler down on the whiteboard, it's not going to erase itself. Let's look at one more. This one's going to be a little bit simpler to work with. Remember that our equation is y equals mx plus b. Our next points are going to be 2, 5, and -1, -4. The first thing I want to do when I'm trying to make an equation, to make a slope-intercept equation, is I want to find the slope. Slope is the difference of y over the difference of x. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this my point 2, so I'm going to start off with this point. So I'm going to say 5 minus -4, and I'm going to say 2 minus -1. I'm going to add the opposites on here. 5 plus 4 is 9. 2 plus 1 is 3. 9 over 3 can actually be reduced so that my slope is 3, which is a much nicer number to work with. So I'm going to put that into my equation. Remember, 3 is the slope, so instead of writing m, I just put a 3 in there. Now I need to figure out what this b is, this y-intercept. To figure out the y-intercept, I'm going to pick one of these points and put them in the equation. Because I don't want to work with too many negatives, I'm going to put 2, 5 into the equation. So that means y is going to be 5, and x is going to be 2. 3 times 2 is 6, and this is where you be really careful that your 6's don't look like b's. Now I have a 6, and I need to get rid of it to get this b all by itself. So to get rid of it, I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. 5 minus 6 is -1. -1 is b. So what that means is that our equation is y equals 3x. Now, I could say plus -1 if I wanted to, or to make things simpler, I could simply say -1. So right now my equation is y equals 3x minus 1. And there's a special code written in here so that you don't have to do much math after this. All you have to do is draw the coordinate plane, which should be on your grid paper, and then you just create the line. So I have my coordinate plane here, perfectly spaced as always. If you're not in my class, you won't know that I sit there and say that every time I put a coordinate plane up on the board. It's a challenge that I have not yet perfected, but we're still working on it. My y-intercept, which is b, which is this number right here, I'm going to put that somewhere on this line. Now I can't just put 1, I have to find -1 on this line. So -1 on the y-intercept is right here. And then what I want to do is I want to graph it using the slope. Now I just have a slope of 3. And when you try to make a whole number into a fraction, because we need a fraction to get rise over run, what you want to do is you just want to put it over 1. So it's going to be jump 3, run 1. So we're going to jump 3, 1, 2, 3, we're going to run 1. I don't have enough room to jump 3 again, so what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to do this backwards. I'm going to reverse the signs on this. Because this was 3, 1, I can look at it as -3 over -1, which means I can fall 3, 1, 2, 3, and I can run backward 1, and I will still have the same line.